This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are sports reporters based in Syracuse, New York. This is a Mets podcast, but we talk about a lot of other teams too, especially in the offseason. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot that's been going on over the course of the past week, beginning with Juan Soto.
Boy, oh boy, what a world. We got a Soto sweepstakes, a Sasaki sweepstakes. We're going to talk about all of it. I'm actually so excited. I love this offseason speculation and rumors and who's going to go where. It's like, I don't know, it's like a fun game.
It's the hot stove is hot, baby.
Hot.
We got a lot to talk about. And we want to start with Soto because obviously that's been a big topic of conversation, especially here in New York and beyond. And at this point, people are really starting to hunt for him. We have Steve Cohen going to make a trip to visit with him and Scott Boras. We heard from Scott Boras earlier this week. What are you thinking about everything that you heard so far as Juan Soto? And then we'll kind of get more into the specifics.
Yeah, so some interesting stuff about Juan Soto this week, right? The full court press kind of starts this week for the Juan Soto sweepstakes that only a few teams really seem to be in. I mean, I'm really not going to lie to you. At this point, I would label myself genuinely shocked and astounded if Juan Soto was not a Met, a Yankee, or maybe a Dodger. But I really think he's going to be a Met or a Yankee.
Yeah, me too.
Which is what's so interesting of like, these are the two New York teams fighting for the grade A caliber free agent this year. So that's just fun and fresh.
There have been some really good tweets off of that. Like, I don't know if you saw when like the Rays like threw their name into the ring.
Yeah.
And like people would be quote tweeting it and be like, I also sent Livy Dunn a DM. like
I also shot my shot in the DM.
Yeah, okay, buddy.
Okay.
I agree. It's down to a few big hitters here.
Yeah. Some big boys. Steve Cohen traveling to Stevie getting on a plane, traveling to Southern California this week to meet with Soto
Probably
and
his plane.
Scott Boras. Probably his plane. He probably has one, I would imagine. If I was a billionaire, I would too. The New York Post reported that late last week. So the Post said it is possible that Cohen will meet with Boris's other free agents as well during his visit to Boris's complex. Not really sure I knew Boris had a complex, first of all. We might need to take it. We need to do an off-season episode on Scott Boras. I'm so interested in that man's life.
After some of the one-liners, which we'll get into, fascinating
We
stuff.
are going to do a full Scott Boras episode. Anyway, Boris's clientele this offseason also includes Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Alex Bregman, of course, Pete Alonso. Jose Iglesias, Candelita, just hired Scott Boras too, by the way, which tells me that Candelita's looking for his payday. That's another topic. Anyways, but what was really interesting to me so the Post reported this, that Steve Cohen was going to Southern California. I believe it was like last Thursday, Friday, end of the week. Then some word had surfaced about Brian Cashman told the New York Post that he was unsure if Hal Steinbrenner, Yankees owner, was going to have a formal meeting with Soto. Maybe he'll live in Soho, I don't know. With Soto, because he said that he's really familiar with the organization. They might not need a formal meeting, okay? Brian Cashman says that. The Yankees world is kind of like, ooh, doesn't sound great.
Like that.
I don't really know if I like that they're not going to have a meeting. And then promptly after that is hot off the press, John Heyman immediately reported that Steinbrenner had all of a sudden set up a meeting. The Yankees, very interesting there. It's kind of like the Yankees were like, yeah, go take your meetings, go look around. We know who we'll come back to and have the final say. And then Hal Steinbrenner heard that Stevie's getting on a plane and he was like, yeah, never mind. This is going to go a little quicker than we thought.
Matter of fact, let's set up that meeting after all. Let me remind you
Matter
who
of
the
fact,
Yankees
anybody
are.
got his number?
Wait, it does. I will say on that whole, once I read this and saw this, it's feeling like the Yankees were a little late to kind of set some of this stuff up. I feel like Steve Cohen is going there to freaking impress, man.
Wine and dine.
Yes. This is not just going to be a hi, how are you situation. No. He is going to pull out all the stops. It's not just that this is a guy that has money. I've seen people say it on Twitter that him and Scott Boras have been known to get deals done quickly.
Yeah.
If he can help it, and I know this might not be true, but Steve Cohen would love to leave there with the deal and the handshake done. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am saying he's going to be aggressive and assertive in his approach with Juan Soto now that we know what he wants.
And allegedly, Steve Cohen and Scott Boras have a very good relationship. That was also reported heavily this week, that those two get along and that they... So we'll see what he's able to do. I think, right? Steve Cohen, like you said, he's going to court him. I think he's going to really blow out all the stops. And if a billionaire is courting you, I don't really know what that has to offer, but it seems tantalizing. Not that Hal Steinbrenner can't offer the same sort of thing, but I think that Steve's really going to try to knock his socks off. I don't know.
Here's the other thing. So there was an interview that also came out, and SNY posted it. There was a lot of articles written on it, where Scott Boras was fielding questions, taking an interview on behalf of his client, Juan Soto.
Sure.
And I really thought that was a very insightful interview, because through that, I felt you at least understood what Juan Soto's priorities are. Yeah, one of them is the money.
Well.
Everybody, no, they're a secret to absolutely no one. But so frequently, he brought up the idea of winning. He wants to know that he's going to be in contention to win something, to win the World Series, not something, every single year. And a part of that, and this was also brought up, was the ownership. He was saying Juan wants to know his ownership, and he wants to know that it's going to support an opportunity to win annually. I'll say this. The Yankees went to the World Series, so I can't sit here and say they don't want to win. But what I will say is, if you actually look at the trajectory of the two teams, what I would like or find exciting about the Mets is how over the past few years, you've just continued to see it go up and up and up, especially with the new ownership. You see all the pieces they're trying to put in place. We've mentioned this in the past, but honestly, tough blow for the Yankees this offseason. There's going to have to be a lot of tough conversations. It ended on a really sour note, whereas with the Mets, I feel like it ended on a note of the best is yet to come. I feel like with the Yankees, it's like if the fundamentals aren't cleaned up, perhaps the worst is yet to come.
Right.
If you lose out on Juan Soto and some of these other, easy mistakes aren't cleaned up. They also re-sign Aaron Boone, which honestly I think, or they allow Aaron Boone to stay on. I feel like there are some Yankees fans who don't love that and are sick of Aaron Boone and want to see something big happening here.
Yeah.
And I think the Mets do that kind of day in and day out. There's big people who come over. They hire big names. They want big players. It's different.
The Mets under Steve Cohen, I don't think you can really dispute, are the newer, more exciting, younger, fresher model. I just don't think you can really dispute that. Yes, the Yankees are always going to have that legacy culture and all of it that we've touched on so many times. You have to respect the Yankees organization throughout the history of baseball, and we do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that in the year 2024 and moving into now 2025, the Mets are more exciting. And I don't even feel like I'm saying that with the bias of a Mets fan. I feel like that's just true throughout baseball. You can let me know if you disagree. I'm sure some people will disagree. Also took out of that Boras interview, he did say, quote, playing in New York was really comfortable for Juan. Love to hear that.
Me too. And that still doesn't take away the Yankees factor. And I know that there are going to be some Yankees fans, or maybe just even baseball fans out there who like you said, are looking back at the history and, well, the Yankees have won 27 World Series and the Mets have won 2.
I am well aware.
But if you're signing now, who gives a rat's ass about that? Like, you're looking ahead.
One ass of a rat.
You're looking at the future. You're looking at the future. And I'll tell you what, I know that money's a factor, but if you could ultimately, if I was Steve Cohen, I would say to him something along the lines of, well, meanwhile, Steve Cohen will probably have the biggest offer anyway. But if you asked him...
Blank checkbook.
Yeah. So that's not even, it's a non-factor. But if you said to Juan Soto right now, you could have whatever it is, $650 million and no World Series, or $600 million and win a World Series, I think he's really the kind of guy where that's going to matter to him. And success is, I'm not going to say as important as money, but it's a big piece here. It's a big factor.
Yeah. Another Boras quote that you have here that says, you have the Mona Lisa of the museum, Boras said. You have the attraction. You also have somebody who allows owners to win repeatedly. And when owners win repeatedly, their revenues skyrocket. I know Scott Boras is just the salesman of the century.
This was the best.
Sure.
And I hate that when he actually said this the first time, there was a reporter who cut him off in the middle. I'm like, you really stood in the way of greatness here.
No, as a reporter, you shut your mouth. That's the first rule.
You needed to just let this quote kind of air out. But he said, you can really see the owners, the general managers, they're kind of called upon to be championship magicians. It's kind of what they're asked to do. It's hard to do, to put together that magic for the championship run, but behind every great magician, obviously, is the magic wand.
All right, Scott, you're pushing it. You're pushing it.
And it's not, there was not one person there who was like, witty, he came up with that now.
I would have been crying laughing.
That was locked and loaded for like a week.
Oh, he's been
like,
practicing that in the mirror.
But
and
it was funny.
No, it is funny.
And it was smart.
Funny.
Like, honestly, it made sense. Like, he knows how to sell one. But that's the thing. Like, I don't think there's any team at this point who doesn't know what it is that they're getting.
Yeah.
It's something really, really significant. It's like he's that perfect mix of he's young, but he also has been in so many championship level situations where he has so much experience at such a young age. Of course, he's a unicorn.
Juan Soto has 10 years left, probably of his prime. Forget about his career, probably 15, but probably 10 years left of being among the top 10 best players in baseball if he stays on the trajectory that he's been on. Now, here's a question and an opinion I kind of want to ask you about. There are some people, I'm not saying I'm in this camp, I'm not in this camp, but there are some people, namely the Dodgers fans in our comments, hello, how are you all, who really don't want Juan Soto. Now, Dodgers fans have their own reasons for that and people they want to re-sign otherwise, and I understand all that. Even though MLB insider Mike Rodriguez did report that the Dodgers intend to be very competitive in their pursuit of Soto, facing strong money competition from the Mets and Yankees. Where I'm going with this is, I feel as though some other fan bases who just namely can't afford him, but also the Dodgers who can afford him, they're shying away from him because I think there is some sense around baseball that maybe this is a guy who might take the highest offer and might just go where he feels like the money is good and he has the best chance to win. You look at Juan Soto's career. He's been a National. He's been a Padre. He's been now a Yankee. And now he'll be on his fourth team at the age of 26. I understand some of that was not in his control and there were trades and other factors. I got it. But I think this is Soto's chance to, he hasn't really, you know how some guys come up, right? Pete Alonso's identity is a Met. You have these franchise guy. Juan Soto has not been a franchise guy anywhere, and I think he has yet to show that, I guess, loyalty or that real, like, connection with a fan base because he's been to so many throughout his very young career. Now, obviously, this is his chance to do that and sign somewhere for 10 to 15 years and become that franchise cornerstone guy. Do you think he has that in him? Because I think that's where some people shy away from him a little bit. Now, I think a good example of this is Francisco Lindor. The Mets signed Francisco Lindor from the Cleveland, at the time Indians, now Guardians, and he wasn't really that type of guy. He grew into that player. You saw him as he approached age 30, grow into that player. Now he's that leader that we would want him to be captain type of guy. Juan Soto has not been that type of guy, but he's young, and he hasn't really, I guess, had that pedestal or that stage on the teams he's been on. He's been a star, but even with the Yankees, you knew he was there for 1 year, whatever. So you understand what I'm getting at this point. Do you feel like Juan Soto is going to bring that to a team? If it's the Mets, is he kind of always in Lindor's shadow? If they bring back Alonso, is he in Alonso's shadow? Or is he that leadership guy with the media and with the franchise and whatnot? Does he grow into that role? I don't know. We can't really answer it, but what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's a few different questions. If he is that leadership guy, hard to say because he's so young. Do I think if he comes here that Lindor is still going to be the leader and the captain? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I absolutely think that from a culture standpoint, I think Juan Soto will be a great fit here. He seems fun. He seems lively.
Yeah.
He seems energetic. I don't really think that he fits what I would consider to be the normal Yankee mold. I think he...
Yeah, not a normal Yankee mold.
You know what I mean? No. Like, he doesn't really have that vibe to me. He does have a Mets vibe to me.
Yeah.
Someone who's fun and exciting in the way that he plays and in the way that he carries himself. I think at the end of the day, you're looking at somebody who wants to be a competitor. So maybe the reason why he hasn't felt that loyalty yet is because, A, yes, he knew he was potentially leaving after this year. He knew he needed to keep his options open to get the money.
It was an open relationship.
It was an open relationship, and both sides kind of knew that.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm surprised where you hear about a guy like Steinbrenner, like, this was an open relationship, buddy. We got to start these conversations earlier. But
right.
I do think that absolutely he has the capability to be a player who shows loyalty to a fan base.
Yeah.
But I don't really blame him for not doing that yet. He kind of needed to keep his options open so that everybody knew that there was interest coming into this year. No, I don't think the money's the biggest factor for him. And the only reason I could see why Dodgers fans would, I don't know why you wouldn't want a guy like him. Honestly, I'm having a hard time understanding that. I guess like you just can't have everybody. And with like Hernandez and some of the other people who they want to keep around, I get being loyal to the people who you've had. I would imagine that maybe a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, just as an example, might have some things that maybe the general baseball fan just doesn't see that Dodgers fans have just bared witness to. But I think Juan Soto is greatness, and I don't feel like a deal comes around like this so often.
I agree.
If you could get him, I think you should try.
I absolutely think you should try. I'm honestly very surprised by, as we've been kind of saying without saying it, the Yankees' lack of, you're the Yankees there, you had the advantage, at least in, I know there was a pennant race and there was many other things to worry about, but you had the early in on Juan Soto because he was on your team. I guess I'm just a little surprised with the Yankees, I guess, lackadaisical sense of going after him. I kind of see both sides of it. I sort of do see Ron Darling came out and said this, the argument, okay, well, what can you do with that $600 million? You can sign 2 or 3 good players. And I know that. At the same time, it kind of, to your point, feels hard to know if you could win this sweepstakes and you have the means and the resources, why would you not try to win it and get your cornerstone player who is going to be great for 10 to 15 years? It just seems kind of silly if you are in that race to not try to win the race.
I know, I need some Yankees fans to lock in here because are they feeling the way that we're feeling, where I really kind of feel like they dropped the ball? I hate to go back to an analogy like this twice in 2 weeks, but if it was an open relationship, maybe Juan Soto had some other girlfriends, but the Yankees were the wife. It's like
Or they were at least, no, they weren't married because he didn't, but they were like engaged. Like there was a ring on the finger.
Fiance?
Sure.
I mean, it was someone more, it was the most relevant relationship that you were in. It was the
his
current
favorite
relationship. It was the one he brought in public.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
Come on, man. It's like, you got to try hard there. So I don't know. I feel like if they do lose him.
And he could still be a Yankee. He could still be a Yankee.
And I would understand it if he decided to still be a Yankee because I do think they have the advantage, the upper hand. No doubt he's formed relationships there. He's close with guys on that team. But honestly, I think that if he met some of the Mets players, I'm sure he would fall in love with them too. So it's hard to say.
So your prediction as of right now is Juan Soto is going to be a Met?
I really do think he's going to be a Met. I think... And honestly, it's funny, out of all the things that made me feel that way, and this is not because we have a Mets podcast, this is not because we're Mets fans.
Yeah.
Honest to God, the thing that put me in that direction is, number one, I think Cohen's ability to give out money is limitless, endless.
Wine and dine.
Wine and dine. However, the other reason why I think he's going to be a Met is because of how important he said that ownership was to him.
Yeah.
If you want ownership that's trending upwards, that's trending in the right direction, that really cares about the team, and that's willing to make changes at every level.
Yeah.
It's not just him, it's Stearns, it's Mendoza, even in game.
I was gonna say.
Changes. Even in the World Series, right? How long was Aaron Judge just sucking for, and they wouldn't move him in any other place in the lineup?
Yeah.
Like, things like that would stick out to me if I was Juan Soto.
Yeah.
I want somebody who, maybe Mendoza didn't always make the right decisions, but he changed things, and he was committed to winning.
And organizationally, top to bottom, there's some stability right now. Like you just said, Carlos Mendoza is going to be the Mets manager. David Stearns is going to be their president of baseball operations, operating in a GM capacity. The Yankees, I can't really say the same. I mean,
No.
I'm sure Hal Steinbrenner and the Steinbrenner family is going to own that team forever. But does Aaron Boone seem on a little bit shakier ground? Does Brian Cashman seem on a little bit shakier ground, even though he's been there forever too? Yes. I don't think it's the same stability and general upward trend that you're seeing across town. And I know that is recency bias. That's the last few years. But if I'm Juan Soto, I'm only looking at the last few years. If I'm Juan Soto, do I really give a damn what happened in 1970, whatever? No, I really don't.
No. Not because that has nothing to do with his legacy.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, so that was your team's legacy or your family's legacy, but it's like he wants to forge his own pathway.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's the kind of guy who's committed to a franchise that has won in the past or was used to winning. He wants to win now, and he wants to win in the future. I think with the Mets, he has the potential to do that.
We'll see what happens.
Or the Dodgers, by the way.
Or the Dodgers, yeah. I would say, I mean, if I had to make a prediction right now, I'd also say he's gonna be a Met, but I would say Mets or Yankees. That's not really breaking news. MLB insider Hector Gomez said that as of right now, he would be very surprised if the Mets don't sign Soto. I think Stevie's gonna get his way. I think Stevie's gonna get what he wants. Doesn't often not get what he wants. You see him lose out. We've seen him lose out on some free agents throughout his tenure as Mets owner, but he doesn't lose on the ones that he really wants to win.
He doesn't lose on the magic wand.
No.
We'll see what happens.
please.
All right, let's move on. A lot of other things happening this week. We have Roki Sasaki. Dodgers fans, lock in. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
This is someone who people are calling the next generational talent. He's a 23-year-old. He is supposed to be a star. He has all the makings to be a star. And the Dodgers are hunting him right now.
Yes. He is expected to be posted by his team in Japan, the Marines, this week. He is 23 years old. He throws over 100 miles an hour. His fastball, his heater, just great stuff. He had a 2.10 ERA, 11 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings in 4 seasons in Japan. What a stat that is. And he has a good splitter. On the scouting report, David Stearns made a scouting trip in September to go watch him, which really stuck out to me. I know the whole rest of the world doesn't stop, but like, you remember what was going on with the Mets in September? A lot. David Stearns took the time to go over to Japan and watch him. Reports say it won't necessarily come down to necessarily the biggest check. I think these pitchers, when they're being courted from Japan, not just pitchers, but it's been pitchers recently from Japan, I think they like to see that loyalty. They like to see who comes to visit them and watch their starts and watch their pitching in Japan. So that already is a good sign to me that David Stearns made the trip. John Heyman reported today that the Dodgers are favored for Sasaki, but hearing early word the Padres could have a shot, that Yu Darvish connection. Very early odds, he said he'd put the Dodgers at 83% to sign him, the Padres at 10%, everybody else at 7%. What do you think about another Japanese pitcher?
I do think that you have to think that, at least to a certain extent, being able to have some other teammates
Yes.
who also have like Japanese roots and things of that nature is important. I think that connection, I don't think you can understate that, you know?
Yeah.
Like I've thought about that a lot, just as far as like being able to even, you know, communicate in a different way and being able, like, I think that it probably would feel a lot less isolating. So I could see how that would be a big deal. But beyond that, it's also the Dodgers, right? Like if you want to come into a franchise where it's like, yes, if you're thinking about your own legacy, you know, the Dodgers are a winning franchise right now. They're going to come in and they need to defend that title. But they, like, what else do you really need on your resume? It's like, hey, we literally just won a World Series. We're going to have all these great pieces. We're totally on the up. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Dodgers land him.
Yeah, I think all the teams, right? The Padres have Yu Darvish, the Mets have Kodai Senga, but the Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto. They certainly, I think, more than any other fan base throughout baseball, I would say, have that connection to Japan and Japanese players. And we've even seen it a little bit with this podcast, some people who watch from Japan. So I wanted to shout that out. Thank you guys. But
that is so cool, by the way.
Cool.
6% of our audience, by the way.
Yeah. MLB.com said the Mets, Yankees, and Cubs are among the teams that have done extensive scouting on Sasaki, who drew dozens of scouts to his starts throughout the season. One AL executive who believes the Dodgers and Padres are the co-favorites to land Sasaki said the Mets may not be far behind. Out of the East Coast teams, I think the Mets have the best shot, that executive said. Has big league teams dreaming of his potential as a #1 starter, though he does have that lack of innings issue to be considered when he arrives in the majors next season that we kind of see most pitchers from Japan struggle with. We've seen it with Kodai Senga. I believe Yamamoto, I think, face some innings limits as well. You always see the pitchers come over for Japan. It's a bit of an adjustment, right? We talked about this with Kodai Senga this year. With A, the innings limits, B, the rotation, you know, how many times you pitching per week. It's an adjustment in a lot of areas. Would you be interested from a Mets perspective of the Mets landing him?
Yes, definitely yes. I think right now the Mets are aching for pitchers.
Well, yeah.
Desperate for pitchers,
Certainly.
especially starting pitchers. So much is in the air. So many of them are going to be free agents at this point. I kind of think you got to go for what you can get here and go for some big time players, or at least have those conversations because, right, like we talked about this, but some of these guys are so big, and we'll get into him, but like a Garrett Crochet, where you're not going to be able to land everybody.
No.
So why not go for some of the guys who you think could be big shots? I would say definitely yes. You?
I think yes, but I think you got to look at the rest of the field first. Like, you have Kodai Senga coming back. We've talked about how that's a little bit uncertain with just how he finished last season. You want Minaya back. You want Severino back, as David Stearns says. Where does that leave the rest of your rotation? Reports say that they're going after kind of Corbin Burns rather aggressively. Garrett Crochet. I think an offseason in which the Mets came out with Corbin Burns and Garrett Crochet, both would be a dream situation. Even just one would be a delight.
I want Crochet.
So does does Sasaki fit into that picture? I'm sure he could, and I'm sure but it's more about like where do you want to put your resources, especially when you do have Senga, but maybe Senga's an advantage in that race. I don't know. We'll see.
What I'm saying is have the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Have the conversations with everybody, because just because you want some of these guys doesn't mean that everybody's going to work out.
Yeah.
So why not at least put your hat, like be in the ring with everybody.
And they
put
will
up
be.
a fight.
They will be in the ring.
And then you see what happens and you decide from there. But let's have some conversations if we can.
And if you're the Dodgers, how confident are you feeling about that right now, Dodgers fans? Because I would say it's certainly leaning in your direction.
Yes. And how high on your wish list is he?
Yeah.
Because it's feeling like he's pretty high. Moving on a little, just a couple other things to note. We did also want to talk about Garrett Crochet. Again, according to John Heyman, who I feel like we talk about a lot on this podcast of the New York Post. This was also elaborated by Jeff Passan. The Mets are among several teams who are in conversations right now about the left-hand starter. But there are other teams in it too, of course, in the mix. Dodgers, Phillies, and Padres. I think if you're some of these teams, I saw an article that was titled, Here are 3 teams who should be making sure that Garrett Crochet does not go to the Dodgers. And that's a great headline. Like some of these teams, it's like you almost want to go into it, especially for a team like the Padres, like try and get him just so that the Dodgers don't continuously become this super team. And I love me some Dodgers fans. Y'all know how much you mean to us, but I could totally see if you're another fan base, probably even if you're a Dodgers fan, you could understand that. Like, damn, how many of these guys are they going to get? You know, like you got to try and stop that or limit that a little bit.
Totally. I would say Crochet's age intrigues me, 25, also Sasaki 23, so that is an attribute that I like about him as well. But here's the thing about Crochet, okay? He was on the Chicago White Sox this year. Now, as I'm sure everybody knows, the Chicago White Sox this year were like the worst team in the history of baseball, legitimately ever. He has expressed a strong desire to sign a long-term contract with the team despite their challenging season and losing record. First of all, if I'm a Chicago White Sox fan, which do those exist, I'm like, oh my God, like this guy's the greatest. Like he wants to stay after all this. However, USA Today's Bob Nightingale reported that the White Sox still plan to trade the lefty during the offseason, which I probably would too if I were the White Sox. Although not even necessarily. I mean, I guess I don't know what goes on with the White Sox. Do you have the money? Do you have the resources? But if I have a 25-year-old star pitcher, he might seem like a good guy to start the rebuild around. I don't know. That's a different discussion.
I feel like they might just need bodies, position players.
Blow it all up. But what I have to say is to Garrett Crochet, who is not listening to this podcast, but if he was, Garrett, I know you want out of the Chicago White Sox. I know you do. I know you don't want to have another season with the White Sox. Who does? Like,
why would he say that then, though?
I don't know. Maybe he's from Chicago. We should have looked that up. But I know you want to go to a winning culture, and I don't know where it'll be. The Phillies have one. The Padres are certainly trying to have one. The Mets are trying to have one. So I think Crochet is going to get traded. I think the White Sox know they can get a haul for him. And I said you probably would want to build around him, but also you can get a haul of game-changing, organizational-changing prospects through trading him. So do I think he's going to be traded? Yes. And I would just absolutely love to see him become a Met and join, hopefully, Sean Manaea.
But you know what? It's like every team has their reasons with this one. Like the Dodgers, we remember from talking about it last year that the big thing was down some starting pitchers. They're going to have to rely on their bullpen. They could really use a guy like Crochet.
Surely.
Same thing with the Mets.
On a Dodgers note, where do Jack Flaherty go and where does Walker Buehler go?
That's what must be very tough about this entire offseason situation is that at the same time that you're trying to fight and potentially hold on to some guys, you also need to be having conversations with new ones, and you just don't know like which pieces you're going to be able to hold on to, and you can't give money to everybody. But all I can say is that the first time I really saw him was when he performed at the All-Star game.
Sure.
And I was so damn impressed. Like, he was just one of those guys that, like, when I was sitting watching it with my dad, I'm like, and my dad said the same thing. He's like, the Mets could really use a guy like that.
Mets could use that guy.
And especially then when the White Sox were already sucking, it was like, go get a guy like that who probably wants to be somewhere else. Go fish for him.
I know he's going to bite. I know he would.
Cast some bait.
Yeah. Also, Tanner Scott, another guy that we kind of have talked about throughout the season, but man, oh man, could the Mets use Tanner Scott. He's a free agent. He had a 1.75 ERA in 2024. I know the Phillies are interested. The Padres are interested. But for a bullpen that needs somebody in front of Edwin Diaz, a setup guy, a guy you know you can go to rely on, Tanner Scott would just be an absolute delight. So we'll see what happens.
One more thing before we go to our last bullet here. Just wanted to point it out. This is a Mets thing for our Mets season beyond. They hired Desi Drusel as an assistant pitching coach. This just came out today. He was previously with the Yankees since 2019. He joined the major league staff there in 2022, and he also previously spent time with Mendoza. Again, it's just, you talk about Yankees as the old model and Mets as the new model. Like, what could make that more true than all of the people who I feel like they have recently stolen? You have Druschel, you have Mendoza, and now it's time for Soto to round it out, and then we have this perfect little trio to just call it a freaking day. But no, it's actually pretty cool. He's going to work under Jeremy Hefner now. This was something that was noted previously, but David Stearns said that the entire Mets coaching staff would be back all in the same positions, but they didn't have an assistant pitching coach last year, and now they do. Why not add an addition, especially in a position that you didn't have before? To me, it's just further proof that they're trying to bolster is a word that comes to mind. Just bolster.
Yeah, and hopefully he has some new pitchers to work with on the New York Mets, we would hope.
Preach.
Anyways, our final thing is today the NL Manager of the Year candidates were announced. Top 3 in the National League: Carlos Mendoza, Pat Murphy of the Brewers, and Mike Shildt, I believe it is, of the Padres. Pat Murphy won the Sporting News, does like kind of a it's not the official awards, but he won the Manager of the Year for that. Interestingly enough, worlds colliding, today I got to talk to Pat Murphy because he was here in Syracuse, being inducted into the Greater Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame. What a delight that was, and very pertinent and very timely. So I asked him about the Manager of the Year race, how he feels about David Stearns from his time in Milwaukee, and really just about the general state of baseball. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Every bone in my body wanted to ask him what exactly was going through his mind when Pete Alonso hit it over the wall and ended his season, but I restrained. I remained professional, and here is that clip.
I mean, the game is a different game than it was. I started 10 years ago in Major League Baseball, and the game is, it's changed tremendously. Players are bigger, stronger, faster. The game is evolving into a game that you have to have a complete team to win. Upsets are there, but it's, sometimes being in Milwaukee, you're a small market, sometimes you feel like you're the have-nots, and there's the haves and the have-nots. But baseball's a game where anybody can beat anybody, and it's still just, it's America's game. There's so many life lessons to learn in the game, so I love it.
We've seen a lot of the haves and the have-nots with free agency. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier, the amounts of money that some of these players are making. But like you mentioned, in a town like Milwaukee, I guess just it's a testament to you and what you've been able to do there. Just how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, you're just playing it with a different set of rules, and that's all there's to it. It's like we don't have the money to go out and sign those free agents, but you find young, hungry guys that have great energy, and you put it all together, and they're playing for survival. And sometimes that's a dangerous person to go up against. So I think we've been lucky, and we've also been fortunate to kind of know who we are. We're genuine. We know we're a small market. We're not going to sign that guy that the Mets or the Yankees are going to sign. But there's enough players out there to give everybody a run.
I hate to ask, but did you spend any time with David Stearns in Milwaukee, and just what were your thoughts on him just as a...
I worked with David for 7 years. He's terrific. Brilliant guy, knows the game, treats his people great, diligent, great decision maker. I think he's going to do great things for the Mets.
And moving forward to your own personal, I know you're certainly in talks in those Manager of the Year conversations. We'll see what happens, but just, I guess, how has that been for you? What does that mean to you if you were to be honored with that?
Yeah, I'm not thinking too much about that. That's not something that I get involved with. I don't know why they give the award sometimes. You know what I mean? It's really about team and about staff. But again, it's something that I'm honored to be part of. I didn't expect it. I didn't think anything. Sporting News voted me Manager of the Year, and I didn't even know how to feel. Like, wait a minute, I wanted to call my staff and say thanks, but yeah, it's part of the responsibility of the job.
Well, I know you probably wanted to ask him about Pete Alonso, but I'm really happy you didn't.
No, that would have been too far.
It wasn't the right day.
I knew it was too far. And, he was being honored and all that. So Pat Murphy will probably win NL Manager of the Year, even though I wish Carlos Mendoza had a better shot. My Mets bones in my body feel like Carlos Mendoza should have a better shot, but it just feels like Pat Murphy's going to win that award.
Hey, keep sticking with us. At the very least, we're here once a week, if not more, if there's big and breaking news.
When there's bombs.
When there's bombs,
Soto bombs. Boris bombs.
We are going to be here. Boris
No one
bomb.
ever said Boris bombs.
That's nice.
You know, people used to say Woj bombs.
Both of us are big on alliteration, so perhaps we're bringing that back for the next episode. All that to say, thanks again, as always, for joining us. Good time to just say you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, social media. We're everywhere. YouTube, the handle is all the same, at YMetsPod. But as we mentioned earlier, stick with us even if you aren't a Mets fan, because we're expanding to general baseball, especially in the off season. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. We'll see you back here next week.